Thank you all for attending. I appreciate you coming. This is another new webinar. I enjoy sometimes going down the rabbit hole, learning all sorts of different stuff that I can share with you. And this particular webinar is 10 plants you can make tea from in your backyard. There's actually more in here than just the 10 plants, but it's kind of a little bit of a history into what maybe Native Americans used. So you can see maybe the history of where some of these plants came from. Not everything is native, but some of it is considered native if it was here long before uh, settlers were here back, I believe it's goodness in like the 1700s or something like that. So, as I've asked others to do, so I know where you're from, we are starting to get a bigger and bigger audience. If you don't mind putting your city and county, or just your county if you want to do that. Um, if you're from out of state, if you don't mind sharing that, that's great. That helps me understand where the viewership comes from. These all these webinars qualify for Master Gardener continuing education credits, and they're open to the general public. So if you just like to learn and you want to get better at something else, this is a great way to do it. It's a good way to kind of get a little bit of information on something that you think you might be interested in, and you never know, you might want to go through the Master Gardener course at some point. It's not a master class, it's actually a course for an educated outreach volunteer, but yeah, lots of good stuff. So let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so some people drink a lot of tea. I don't drink a ton of tea, but I do drink it here and there. I do enjoy a good herbal tea. And some people don't think at all about where that tea comes from. What is that tea? What's that plant? And they just don't know. They just go pick up a box, um, like this one. This happens to be loose leaf white tea. Or maybe you get some black tea or green tea or something else. Maybe you already know all of this. Maybe you don't. I don't know. It's always interesting to find out where this stuff comes from. So, tea in general, sweet tea, unsweet tea, hot tea, cold tea, all of that is a water-based infusion where you're taking some type of a plant material and you're mixing it generally with hot water, but it can also be cold water. And those could be leaves, it could be roots, could be flowers, seeds, stems, and all of that is mixed together and then steeped or allowed to kind of ferment. And again, this is just a generality with tea. There's different types. And then we kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit and we talk about the true teas versus herbal teas. And so you might be going, Lisa, I thought they were all teas. Aren't all teas the same? No, they are not all the same. So, true tea or traditional tea, this is going to be coming from the flower Camellia sinensis. Okay, so camellias, and I might need to move yeah, let me move that a little bit. So you can see the flower up there in the corner. We all love, most of us, if we're a gardener, we love camellias. Some of those are blooming right now. Camellias sasanquas are blooming usually September through to December, and then the japonicas will pick up in December-ish through February. But Camellia sinensis is tea. That's the plant that you get the majority of what you think of as tea. All the ones that I just showed you, that's all that plant. So this is true tea. It's going to come from white, yellow, green, black, oolong, and pu'er teas, and they're going to contain caffeine. And you're like, well, how do all of those come from one plant? Well, that's a good question. And some of you may be going, okay, you told me I was going to learn about other plants in my backyard. So yes, I am going to talk about that, but I want everybody to understand what tea is. So that's all those different types. So if you look over on the far right, you see those different colored teas. That's actually your white, your yellow, your green, your black, your oolong, and your pu'er teas. And those are all dependent on how the method of how that particular plant is processed. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Herbal tea, also called tisane, is made from non-tea plants, and that can be anything, including the plants from your backyard. So that can be mint, chamomile, ginger, hibiscus. It could be some weeds. You'll learn about some weeds like plantain and some other stuff. There's no actual tea leaves in there. So there's no Camellia sinensis in any of these herbal teas. Okay. They're just a blend of other types of plants, usually dried, sometimes fresh. But they're all made into what we consider herbal tea. Now, I know most people are thinking of herbs. That's going to be like basil and rosemary, um, thyme, stuff like that. Yes, that is an herb, but herbal is just kind of the catch-all phrase for anything that could be dried or ground up or steeped, fresh and made into a tea to drink. So blend, that's going to be a mixture of teas, which could be, what you see here, your Camellia sinensis or your true teas could be a mixture of that along with some other things. So a blend can be a bunch of different stuff. And then there's the art teas. Those are the blooming teas, and I'll show you some of those. Very beautiful, nice gifts, and good to drink. So those are going to be like hand-tied bundles of tea leaves, flowers that kind of bloom when you put them in water to steep them. So really pretty stuff. All right. So tea types and categories. Now, this is not all inclusive. I mean, this is just, I want you to identify what plant goes with what. So if you go to a tea site online or you go to a tea store where they have a bunch of teas that are maybe loose leaf or, in packages, like this, it'll tell you what it is on there. It'll tell you, green tea, black tea, or it'll say herbal tea, and then what's mixed in there. But here you can see black tea, green tea, all of these, with the exception of the tisane and the rubiose. Those are Camellia sinensis. Okay. So that's what it's going to look like when it's ground. And you can see there that the black tea, fully oxidized, and we'll go through all of that also. So you know about the terminology a little bit more and what constitutes the tea. And then matcha, which is also Camellia sinensis. It's ground up and then just kind of put together in the tea. So instead of straining out the tea, the particles of the plant, you're drinking it. And then there you can see there's the flowering tea, which could have the camellia or the true tea in there, but may also have other flowers and things. It looks like there's a red clover in there, maybe a hibiscus, and those are going to be like your herbal teas. All right, so categories by function or tradition. Tea has been around for so long. I mean, a long time. And it's very deeply rooted in Asia, in European history, and in Native American history as well. So you can see they kind of break them down into different categories based on what functions they're I guess going to do to help you. So sometimes we just want to drink something and relax, and we really don't want to think about, oh, this is helping my respiratory function, or, I've got a bad cough, or maybe my stomach's queasy, that kind of thing. And that's perfectly fine. But traditionally, a lot of times they are a medicine. They're used as a medicine. As I mentioned, long before they had hospitals and doctors and all of that stuff, you might drink a concoction put together by the medicine man or the village elder or, naturalized medicine. And that's what teas were. They basically were all of these herbs that they put together that would have certain functions. So respiratory tea, you can see there. Women's health, that could be for, cramps or something like that. You've got traditional Chinese blend teas and immune boosting teas. You've got calming teas, detox teas. digestive tea. I mean, you've got a lot of different options here, and I've gone ahead and added what those particular types of teas. Now, this is not an all-inclusive list, but you can see the types of plants that are considered in those particular teas. Now, you remember I said there's blends. So a blend may be a bunch of different teas like dandelion root and peppermint. So you're going to try to detox, and maybe you've got an upset stomach, so that's going to make you feel better. Maybe you've got a really bad cough, and you're going to take some respiratory tea. That's mullein. You got licorice root, thyme, but you want to calm down, and you want to be able to sleep because you haven't been able to sleep. So you might also have some chamomile in there. So that's what a blend is. It's going to put together a bunch of different stuff so that you kind of understand a little bit better about how it's all put together. So plant parts. So this is another way of classifying herbal teas, or actually teas in general. So you have roots. So those roots are going to be harvested. Um, they're usually going to have like an earthy or spicy kind of taste. A lot of times it might be digestive based. You've got ginger root, turmeric, dandelion root. Then you might have the bark. So the bark of whatever the plant is might be what's used. And a lot of times that's going to be like woody, mucilaginous, which is like if you're coughing a lot, it might have an expectorant type so you can get all of that stuff out or suppress the cough. It soothes your throat. And then you've got your fruit teas. Sometimes that's just calming, and you like the aroma, so it's something that you can kind of relax. And then you have seed teas. You might have fennel or cardamom or corianders. Leaf teas, that's going to be where they take the leaf of the plant and then dry that, and then they're going to grind it up. And then flowering teas, which the flowering teas are generally going to be clumps are put together of not ground up. It's going to be like the full-on leaf or the flower. They're usually dried, and then they're kind of allowed to kind of close up. They'll put them in a cheesecloth or something like that to dry up. And then when you get your tea, sometimes you'll have a glass tea kettle, and they put that in there, and then they pour the hot water in, and as it steeps and the goodness flows out of the leaves and the flowers and everything that's in there, that will unfurl. It's very beautiful. It's kind of it's the whole package. It's not just you're drinking the tea, but you're enjoying the beauty of the tea and the flowers and all the botanicals that you're going to take. All right, so this is kind of another helpful herbal teas. So, and again, I will go over all of what, it's not a fully extensive list, but I'm going to give you a bunch of stuff that you probably have in your backyard, or somebody. And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. But here's kind of a really nice breakdown in what you can expect for skin health support and the different types of plants there: stress relief, antioxidants, cardiovascular support. I do want to make a note that this is not FDA approved. Sometimes this is, you know, shared from generation to generation. It's in a lot of natural health. Um, these methods have not been proven, in other words. So, and there are some warnings that come with some. Some may say pregnant women should not drink these because it could induce contractions. If you have diabetes, it could raise your blood sugar, stuff like that. So just be aware that, just as with any other type of herb that you're using as a supplement or anything else, some of these teas should be treated the same way. They're kind of a supplement. So just be very aware of what you're taking. Do a little research on it to see if it's safe before you drink it. But generally, it's going to be, pretty okay for you if it's out there on the mass market. You can see anti-inflammatory, echinacea, ginger, oral health. If you've got gingivitis or something like that, you can got an immune boost with echinacea, PMS symptom relief, digestive system, sleep aids. I mean, how many people had their grandma or their mom give them chamomile tea before they went to bed to help them sleep? I mean, that's kind of just a tradition, I think. So this is just kind of an easy way to look at all of this. And as if you're new to this series, this In the Garden series, I am happy to share my slide deck with you. Just make sure when we get to the end of the slide that you note what my email address is, or you can always go to the UGA Extension website and my email address is there. You can email the office one and it'll get to me. And just say you want the slide deck for the herbal teas webinar. All right, so processing true tea. So just again, giving you the educational part so you can understand where it all comes from. So this is true tea. So this is processing Camellia sinensis, so the plant. And you can see there again, there's the different colors of the different stages of the teas based on the oxidation process. So that's going to be your natural chemical reaction where some of those enzymes react with the oxygen, hence the oxidation, and it's going to turn those leaves a little bit darker. So obviously you see black and dark on the far right side of the screen. That's going to be a long oxidation process. Whereas on the far side, where you've got the white tea, which I have some of that right here. This has actually got pomegranate mixed in with it, but it is white tea. So this is a blend. It's going to be barely oxidized. So you can see it's very light in color, and then it gradually gets more and more oxidized. Fermentation. So that's going to refer to microbial activity where you've got bacteria that are kind of, or yeast and other things that are kind of working on that. And that's going to be your dark tea. So the tea that's on the very far right of the screen that you're looking at, or the pu'er tea, the microbes are going to break down those leaf compounds and they kind of change things a little bit, just like you would with kimchi or anything else that you're fermenting sauerkraut. It can be processed for months or years, but it gives you a different tasting product because it's gone through fermentation. You have the rolling, that means twisting or crushing leaves, and that's going to break those cell walls to help initiate that oxidation or that breakdown. And then the withering, that's going to be your drying step, and that's the first step towards getting the moisture out of the leaves for preservation's sake. And then you've got the firing or the fixation that's going to stop that oxidation process. So if you only want white tea, it's going to stop that process so that you don't keep moving down into yellow and green and so on and so forth. And drying that's going to reduce that moisture down to less than 5%. So probably 2 to 3% is what I've got here. But that makes it shelf stable. So you can put it, and a lot of this, like, it's sold in loose leaf tea. And then you have, these little things you scoop out, you put the tea in there, and then you hang it on the side of the cup and it will steep for you. Some of the methods, you're going to pan fire it or put it in a wok. That's very common in Chinese teas. You might steam it. And there's also sun drying and baking. And then if you're in more modern times, you might have a food dehydrator. You can also use your oven. There are other ways of doing it that are probably a little quicker, but a whole lot less traditional. All right, processing herbal teas, a little different because remember, this is a bunch of different plants, not necessarily that Camellia sinensis, or it's not Camellia sinensis. So there's no oxidation or fermentation in this process. You're going to, whatever the plant is, you're going to harvest those leaves, flowers, roots, whichever. You're going to dry it. And again, the methods of drying, very similar. And then you're going to cut, you're going to sift it. Basically, what you're going to do is make sure that it's nice and clean, that it's nice and dry, although you can make tea out of fresh stuff too. And then you're going to combine those into those blends. That's typically what happens with herbal teas, is like, as I mentioned before, you might have chamomile for sleep, but you also might put something in there that has good digestive properties so that you maybe had an upset tummy and you haven't been sleeping. So you put some peppermint in there, or ginger or something like that. So they're very complementary flavors and complementary uses. There are also some optional additions. Most of these are going to be found in commercial blends, and those would be maybe some artificial flavors because let's face it, it is expensive to have some of these, and maybe, I did not check this one. Maybe it's fake pomegranate. I don't know. But they'll put other things in their sweeteners so that maybe if you're diabetic and you want a little bit of a sweet tea, it's already going to have something in there. And also, when you buy these ready-made ones out of the refrigerated section, like I know it's escaping my mind right now, but there are Lipton teas will have the bottled teas. It is tea, but they do put a lot of other stuff in there. It's not just tea. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that you can get those flavors out of those plant parts. And so this is water-based. So that's going to be steeping. That's where you're putting those herbs in water, hot or cold. And then there's a decoction. That's where they're breaking down cell walls. In hard or woody plant parts like bark or seeds, berries, that kind of stuff. So you simmer it. And then there's an infusion, and this is where they're going to extract those volatile oils, peppermint, for instance, and other compounds in the flowers or fresh herbs. And you're going to steep those, you're using that word again, for a couple hours or overnight. So a lot longer than you typically would. Most times when you're making a cup of tea, you might steep it for 5 to 15 minutes, and that's about it. But in a infusion, it's longer. You have a cold infusion, kind of just using cold water, not hot water. And that's if you've got some heat sensitive compounds in there, that's why you would want to do that. So that's going to bring out things like in the slippery elm, you might have a polysaccharide or something like that. It's heat sensitive, so you don't want to do that, or volatile oils. It's going to give you a smoother result. And then maceration, that just basically means that that plant material, you're going to put it in water for an extended period of time. And you can see some of the examples there. And then percolation, that's going to be pouring water slowly through a column of herbs. If you think of cold brew in coffee, where they'll have the coffee suspended and then they have a slow drip on the top that kind of drips down through, it's the same thing. Okay. So non-water-based extraction methods, a tincture. This is often used for, if you think about the old times where they would have lauded or something like that, that's what that is. That's a concentrated liquid extract that they've used that's mixed with alcohol, usually like vodka or brandy or something like that. And that's going to get your alkaloids, your resins, essential oils. Glycerite, that's a vegetable water kind of compound, a little bit sweeter flavor, oil infusions, vinegar extracts. Acetum, that's a vinegar tincture. Resins. Some of these get down to like if you're making salves and things like that, that last one, herbal salve. So it's going to be infused oils and like a thickening agent or something, sometimes petroleum or something like that. But if you're making an herbal salve, a medicinal one specifically, this is what you would make here. All right. So brewing and tasting terms. So again, we kind of went through some of these infusions, steeping and brewing. That's tea and water, basically. Cold brew, kind of already went through that. Liquor, that's a catch-all. It's kind of brewed liquid tea. It's not taking a shot of whiskey or something like that. Aroma, obviously, that's a very obvious one. The body or the weight or the thickness of the tea in your mouth. The finish, we often think of that with regards to wine or something else. Astringency or briskness, do you get a puckery sensation? Notes, notice a lot of these are very similar to what you would expect for a wine tasting or whiskey or alcohol or something like that, sometimes coffee. Bright, coppery, biscuity, that was kind of a weird one, and brisk. All right, why do they call it herbal tea? Kind of mentioned that before, not made with the camellias. So, camellia is a natural source of caffeine. So sometimes when people want to wake up and you don't want all the caffeine that coffee gives you, people will drink tea, Camellia sinensis or true tea, because it has a natural caffeine. And some people swear that it is not near as difficult on your body to process that. It doesn't give you the real high jolt that you would get with coffee or Coke or something like that. So they'll drink tea instead. If you drink an herbal tea, however, without, and you do have to look because sometimes the blends will have some of the true tea in there. So that will have a moderate amount of caffeine. But if you have a true herbal tea where all it is, a variety of other things, not Camellia sinensis, then it's not going to have caffeine in it. So These are going to be the non-woody plants. You're going to have flavors and fragrances. As I mentioned, it's a whole being. It's like a thing, an experience, if you will. Roots, bark, seeds, fruits, and all sorts of plant parts. It can have culinary, medicinal, spiritual, mood altering, cosmetic purposes. I mean, there's all sorts of things here. And I've mentioned it before, but here it is in writing. Most plants used medicinally or as supplements have not received rigorous research showing their efficacy in humans or an inspection program for safe production. Caveat emptor, which means buyer beware. So, and as I say that, sometimes people do take a lot of herbal supplements, but there's no way of knowing 100% that this brand over here is better than this brand over here. You may be buying this bottle thinking that it's 90% whatever it is that you're looking for, but in reality, they have cut it with something else that and you don't have a lot of the active ingredients. So just know that that is not regulated by the FDA, and there's no guarantee that you're getting what you think you're getting. All right. So how to grow your own plants for herbal tea. That's what you're here for, right? So you may already have some of these growing in your yard. There's a lot of ornamentals that are out there that have these medicinal properties that you may not even realize. Some of those examples, echinacea, calendula, lavender, lemongrass, yarrow, mountain mint. Forage for wild plants and weeds for tea. I mean, if once you go through all of this, you might be like, oh, wow, there's a lot of stuff out there. And if you're a little experimental, or you like bushcraft, which if you're not familiar with bushcraft, that means you basically go out into the wilds and you figure out how to eat and sleep and shelter and all of that on your own. You may have some tools in which to help you, but everything else you have to forage for. So this might help you there. If you ever watched the TV show Alone, maybe Naked and Afraid, although they like to go to other continents, they're always giving them ideas and knowledge in bushcraft so that they can better take care of themselves. So you can also grow plants, grow some of these in a container on your deck. If you're in a condo situation, that's okay. If you have a balcony, you can totally grow a lot of these in pots on your balcony. That's perfectly fine. You can even grow some on your kitchen counter. I actually have a webinar coming up on growing herbs on your windowsill. There's a lot of self-contained little LED kits that you can get for growing plants indoors. So you can totally grow stuff indoors. You might just grow a single plant on a sunny windowsill. That's fine. And then, as I mentioned, there's systems that you can use hydroponics if you don't want to get really serious about it. You don't want to over fertilize because a lot of them don't like that. I know some of us are getting used to, if you have house plants, that you put a lot of effort into making sure you water them and you give them the fertilizer that they need every other week, that kind of thing. Most of these plants don't need that. They do much better if you don't mess with that. And then just as a take home, when those flower buds appear, if you've got a particular type of herbal tea that uses the bud or the flower, I know we all want to see them bloom, but if you want those to put more, that plant to put more energy into growing and giving you more of the plant parts, nip off those buds the same way you would if you were trying to delay the flowering of something. You're going to nip those buds off. So harvesting plants, lots of different things you can do here. So you got to know first and foremost, whichever plant you're dealing with, what part. That's very important because you don't want to harvest the roots if you only need the tops, the leaves. So with leaves, you're going to harvest right before flowering for peak flavor. That kind of goes for what we would consider bolting. So think about basil or any of the other herbs. Once they bolt, the flavor is not quite as good anymore, right? So you want to get those plants and harvest them before that happens. If you're harvesting for the flower, like maybe hibiscus, then you want to pick that flower when it's fully open, but not fading yet. Roots, you're going to dig in the fall when all of that energy is back down into that root system, like ginger, dandelion. Seeds, obvious, they've got to be dry, like fennel or coriander. And bark, be very careful and just harvest sustainably. So I'm also certified arborist, and I can tell you if you damage 50% in circumference of a um, tree's trunk, that more than 50%, that tree is going to go into decline and die. So harvest sustainably if you're going to do that. Just take a little bit from this tree, a little bit from that tree. They should be fine because trees can heal themselves. You want to harvest in the morning after that dew dries. That's going to preserve those essential oils and help reduce moisture related spoilage. So you're not going to get any mildew or mold or something like that because sometimes we harvest and then we have the intention of putting it in the dehydrator or getting it out in the sun, but it doesn't quite make it there. And then you've just wasted all of that effort. Use very clean and sharp tools and harvest selectively. You don't want to stress that plant out. Harvest flowers. I think I already had that. When they're fully open, harvest leaves before the plant flowers. I think we already talked about that. Dry that promptly because obviously stuff is going to go bad if you don't do that. Okay, storing plants after harvest. Make sure you wash them. I know some people don't want to do that, but that you might end up with some bug parts in there. So some people might not care, but some might get skeeved out about it. And you probably don't want to serve your grandma aphids, even dehydrated aphids. So wash those plants in cool water and then pat them dry. Check for the insects, get the leaves, the dry or the leaves that are kind of on the bad side, kind of going downhill, get those out of there and dirt. You can store them for up to 7 days in a glass of water. I've done that. You just get a cup, fresh water, you put them in there. A lot of times, if I'm going to make caprese salad or something like that, I'll go harvest basil in the garden and I'll just put it in a cup and I'll leave it there. And then when I need it later in the week, because my garden's way, way out there, I don't have to go wander down there in the dark looking for it. So any plant will generally keep, just think of like a cut flower, for about 7 days. So they can be dried, and there's lots of different ways of doing that. So you can hang them to dry. Some people will do that in their garage. You can spread them out in a cookie sheet and put them on a very low heat in the oven. You can use a food dehydrator. A lot of us might have one of those that, we make beef jerky or fruit roll-ups for. Um, Lots of different ways to do it. You might put it out in the sun if you're very traditional. Lots of different ways to do it. And then once they're dried, and remember it's down to about less than 5% humidity, you're going to put those in an airtight container, like a mason jar or something like that, that you can control the temperature of in a pantry. You don't want to leave it out in the garage, just like you don't want to do that with seeds. You want to make sure that it's in a temperature controlled environment. Freezing herbs is another great way to do that. And that goes both for just the plants that you're going to use for your tea, as well as just generally herbs that you might use for cooking. Um, they can be very finely chopped. They can be put on a baking sheet to kind of flash freeze and then put them in a freezer bag. Don't forget to label it so you know what it is. And you can also put them in, make a pesto or a paste and ice cube trays, and then let that freeze, and then pop those out, put them in a bag. That'll help keep the flavor and the color. There's, lots of different ways to do that. You can make herb butter. That's a good one. These are things that you can do both for tea and for using them for culinary means. And you could make the herbal infusion, if you would. That can be used for a lot of different stuff. I mean, tea, yes, but also salad dressings. You can use them. Maybe you want to make a salve, that kind of stuff. Lots of good things that you can do there. For herbs and oil, you want to make sure that you cover them for a while. You don't want them to go bad. That helps, as that says there, reduce the risk of botulism. All right, this is what you came here for. But I do like to provide the information so you kind of know what it all is and how it all works too, before you go diving into what kind of plants can you make out of. So some of these are very obvious, like you go to the store and you're staring at the grocery store at the the Earl Grey on the shelf. Um, and you may see some of these terms. So echinacea, it is a medical herb form of coneflower. You want the native. You don't want necessarily the native-var, that's cultivar. Some of the other colors and things like that. You want the purple one, the native. The roots contain a very volatile oil. And sometimes they are known to help boost your immune system. So, for instance, way back when, in times before we had modern medicine, it was used for immune reaction against UTIs. An upper respiratory infection. So it was supposed to help boost your immune system so that you could fight those bad bacteria and hopefully overcome it and any secondary infections. So you're going to harvest those flowers when they first start to open up, and roots also in the fall, and leaves as well, and directions there on how to make it. So all of these that I'm going to show you here will have just generalized directions on how to make it. So if you choose to make it, you can get further information on it. I do have some sources and things like that, but it's pretty easy to search if you want very exact directions for how to make these. Dandelion. So I know, my grandma, when I was a kid, had dandelions all over her yard, and I would be like, Grandma, these are weeds. And she's like, no, no, they're not weeds. She said, they're great. And she used to make a tea out of it. I thought it was a little weird. Had kind of a yellowish tinge to it, but she swore by it. She says it's got so many nice nutrients in there. It's so good for me. I drank it. I never saw the point in it, but yes, it's been used for millennia. It can be used as a diuretic. That means to help flush out extra water. So maybe you ate too much salt, you were, overindulging, and now you're all bloated and blown up. You can take some of this. It's a diuretic. It'll help flush out some of that extra water. Known to help stabilize blood sugar, anti-inflammatory, and again, mentioning the antioxidants, that's what my grandma always said to drink it for. It's got prebiotic fiber, and that's supposed to help good gut health. And then it's got some directions there if you would like to try to make it, with a little precaution of, if you've got allergies, ragweed allergies, probably don't drink this. Also, if you're on blood thinners or have other medical issues, clear it with your doctor first. And that goes with any supplement that you might try. I am not an MD. I just do some interesting research and show that to you. So if you would like to try it, please check with your doctor first. All right, peppermint. So a lot of us have used peppermint before. I mean, if you've had a mojito, then you know that that's crushed peppermint leaves and other good things to make you feel better. But peppermint is a very good volatile oil. It has a lot of different uses, not just tea. It's very aromatic. It's supposed to, repel snakes, mites, bugs, all of that stuff. But it's also invasive. So if you want to grow peppermint, put it in a pot. Don't let it grow in the ground. It will just gallop away from you. It's got lots of good oils, those essential oils in there, and just has a lot of goodness for digestion. So if you've ever had an upset tummy and you're out and about and you're like, I can't take Pepto-Bismol, I don't know what to do, and somebody offered you an Altoid or a peppermint, candy peppermint, that's peppermint oil, and that's meant to soothe your stomach and help with that. Also relieve headaches, focus, memory, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, you can take that and you kind of macerate or crush it up a little bit, steep it in boiling water, and then drink it as tea. Next up, chamomile. So that's going to be something that looks a little bit like a daisy. Sorry, not, I want to say Gerber daisy is not a Gerber daisy, Shasta daisy, but very small, like very, very small. I should have something there so that you can see the size. Um, but chamomile is a very soothing tea. That might be something that you would take before bedtime. Sleepy time tea, I think that's basically what chamomile is. So it's also supposed to have minimize osteoporosis, reduce inflammation, fight cancer. Yeah, that might be a little bit much, but promote relaxation and sleep, as I mentioned. So, and then the disclaimer here, you might want to avoid it also if you're allergic to ragweed. Pregnant women probably don't want to take it, blood thinners, that kind of stuff. So just make sure you do your research before you indulge. All right, violets. I've got these out in my backyard. Anti-inflammatory properties can be used to topically treat skin conditions as a salve, or sunburn or insect bites, that kind of thing, and has some good antioxidants in it. So, because I love when they put disclaimers in here, like don't pick African violets, like the flowers that we have on our shelves, because somebody will do that. It's always there because somebody tried it. Um, but only pick these when the flowers are visible so that you know that's what you're getting. There are some lookalikes out there, so you want to make sure that you're getting what you think you're getting. So, directions again on how to steep that. And also, and as a side, that tea can be used as a pH indicator. So, you knew I was going to throw a little chemistry in there. I always have to throw a little chemistry in there. It's going to change the color from blue to purple if an acid is added, like lemon juice. So it's kind of the wrong time of the season now, but if you happen to remember this or come across this when it's summertime and you have some of these blooming in your yard, try it and see. I mean, it may change the color and you can like wow your kids or something. Stinging nettles. So yes, they do sting. And they usually grow next to jewel weed. So if you get stung, you can always get the jewel weed, and that does tame the burn a little bit. But nettle tea, a diuretic. So again, that will help get some of the water out. Antibacterial properties, known to help control bladder infections, UTIs, and edema, the water retention, hence the diuretic. Um, some directions there on how to make it. But again, if you're pregnant, blood thinners, kidney stones, don't do it. Make sure that you're talking to your doctor first. Mullein. So this just does look like a weed, right? And it might be growing at the edge of your woods. It's an edge plant. So if you've got a damaged area or, like you're in a new house, you've got an area back out there where nothing much is growing, you might recognize this because it is considered a weed, but it is also a tea. You can make a tea out of it. It's an expectorant. So if you're coughing a lot and you're just miserable and you have that summertime cold and you forgot to go to get Mucinex at the store, and you've got some of this out in the back, you could try it, I guess. It's supposed to help coat mucous membranes and soothe, reduce inflammation, that kind of thing. You can also use it as a salve. So remember, I said you can mix that with petroleum. So you would steep that, and you would make into a salve or an oil, and use that to put on burns or something like that. And it does have some antiseptic properties. So these are things that you've got growing in your backyard. Sometimes I go down the rabbit hole of what if there was an apocalypse and she didn't have the computer, so you get one of these books that lists all of these plants and what their uses are, how to make these kinds of concoctions, things like that. And I always like having those on the bookshelf. Sometimes it's interesting to just flip through because that's really going back in history. Most of that information was carried forward from way, way, way back when, right? Calendula, so this is a very old cultivated flower, since Roman times, really. So you're going to steep the petals, how most of that is made, but used for reducing inflammation in general, treatment for ulcerative colitis and Crohn's and gastritis. Now remember, if you have these things, clear it with your doctor first. This was used way back when, but your doctor may be a naturopathic doctor and may think that that's great, but make sure you clear that first. So leaves and flowers are used to cook also. because they have kind of a little bitter edge to it. So yeah, that might be worthwhile trying to check that out. Wild lettuce. I have this weed. I do. Um, I didn't know you could use it as a tea, so now I do. It's a biennial herb called bitter lettuce and native to Asia and Europe, so but came over long ago, so it's technically considered naturalized here. It's supposed to relieve pain, to help sedate and encourage you to sleep. So if you've got insomnia, I've got insomnia. I have horrible time change insomnia. You'd think falling back on the clock would be easier to fall asleep. Not so much. Wake up way early. It stinks. So, yeah, this might be something to try if you've had that problem. And I thought this was kind of funny, which is why I put that in there. An herbalist referred to this as a feeble opium because it's a sedative, a very light sedative. Um, Opium is obviously very strong and it's still used in medicinal ways now, but this is a very weak opium, is what they said. So, next up is golden seal. Some of you may have this growing in your garden. It's a perennial plant and it's got yellow roots. I guess I should have put some roots on there. But it's antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, all the good things. And it's because of those alkaloids that are in that plant. And also, there are actually some studies that state that it's can help reduce total cholesterol, triglycerides, and lipoproteins. So if you've got high cholesterol, it may be something that you would want to look into as either a supplement or to drink as a tea. May also help lower blood sugar, help with weight loss. I should have read this more closely because I probably need to get some of that. That's actually a good one. That ticks all the boxes. But don't use it during pregnancy because it could cause premature contractions. And you want to make sure that if you're on other medicines that you're checking with your doctor because you don't want interactions. Plantain, this is a weed. I think we all have it somewhere in our property. It's in the parks, it's everywhere. Very hardy, naturalized all across North America, but it's been used since medieval times and even before, long, long before, as a mucilage, demucilant, and expectorant for coughs. So if you have a really bad cough, it'll help loosen that up and allow you to get that out so you don't get pneumonia. Helps with sore throats, digestive irritation, anti-inflammatory, and all of that. Um, Herbalists call it nature's bandage, which is kind of interested. Sometimes you can blend it, like here, you can blend it with mint and chamomile and lemon balm. That would be if you've like have, as I mentioned before, in a blend where you're not sleeping very well and you're coughing a lot, it can help you get all that stuff up and calm you down so you can go to sleep. Red clover. So this is one that shows up in some of those blooming teas because it is so pretty. It's pretty common as a wildflower. You'll see it out there. Sometimes people even put it in their lawns. It's out there in the pastures, but it's been labeled as a weed. So it's used for its isoflavonoids, and those are like an estrogen type activity. So if you're going through premature hot flashes or you want something more natural that is not, a synthetic estrogen, this might be something that you could try. It can be used for circulatory health, respiratory aids, and all that kind of good stuff. So, but again, check with your doctor. Chickweed. This is a weed that we will see coming up pretty soon now. It's a winter weed. This is one that's supposed to be a respiratory aid, digestive support, anti-inflammatory, and very nutrient rich. So again, directions are there if you choose to make that. Sometimes it's mixed with lemon balm or mint for taste. Yeah, we got a lot of this stuff out here. So if you don't have a lawn service, you probably will have plenty of that to share if you want. And then pines. This is one that we have a ton of that out here. So pine is very high in vitamin C, among other things. It is used a lot around the world, depending on which type you've got. You'll chop those needles up, steep that, and it can be used for an immune support. It gives you vitamin C, a lot of vitamin C. It can be used for respiratory aid or stress relief, all of those things, antioxidants, as I mentioned. So, eat fairly easy to make, but again, a precaution. It might induce uterine contractions if you're pregnant, so don't do that. But otherwise, pine needle tea is pretty easy to make and to drink. If you ever watch Naked and Afraid or any of those TV shows, a lot of times that's what they'll do. They'll drink that so that they don't get rickets or some of those other horrible things that you can get if you're not getting your nutrients from food. All right, so a couple sections here or a couple slides here on Native American plants for herbal tea. I didn't necessarily put in how to prepare these. These are mostly just for research purposes. That information is out there if you want to go get it. Black cohosh. So they used to collect the roots and the rhizomes and make decoctions out of that. It was used to ease menstrual cramps, regulate cycles, and induce labor. So if you were, and that is something that is fairly well known, and if you've had kids, I can even remember being on the pregnancy boards when I had my kids a while back, and people would talk about that, about black cohosh, folks that were like over 40 weeks and said, I want this baby out of me. And people would say, oh, you should go take some of that black cohosh. That'll get you into labor. So yeah, still used to today, still shared as a remedy for that. Elderberry grows wild out in the woods, can be used for all sorts of things. Elderberry wine. You can make decoctions and tinctures and things like that. Syrups, just to put on stuff for flavor, but used for treating colds and inflammation. Be careful on eating the raw ones. You don't want to do that. They can be toxic. So make sure that you're cooking them first to break those toxoids down. And then echinacea. We've already mentioned echinacea, but that can be used for colds and fever. They used it for snake bites, and they would use the flowers and the leaves. They would masticate that and use it as a poultice, where they would put it on top of a sore or a wound, and that would help keep it moist. It has antibacterial properties. They may have not known all of this at the time. They just knew it worked. But it's remarkable how that has carried through time, and they are very, now that we know why, very useful. So yarrow, that's another one. A lot of us have that in our landscape. We grow it. There's white yarrow, yellow yarrow. There's some other cultivars of that. But the fresh leaves and the flowers, if kind of mashed together, will form a poultice. And that would be used to stop bleeding in wounds and prevent infection. It does have an antibacterial property. They would also dry the leaves and the flowers and use that as a tea, and that would help bring down fevers also. So that was and digestive problems if you had that problem. Willow, Salix. As an aside, if you take aspirin, that's what it is. So that willow bark, salicin, is what aspirin is made out of, salicylic acid. So that was the first, pain reliever, I guess, if you want to look at it that. And so they would chew that, and that would help treat the headaches if you had that. Fever, bring your fever down. If you think about it, muscular pain, joint inflammations, that kind of stuff. They knew long ago it worked, still works today. And golden seal, and it looks a little bit like yarrow down there. Roots and the rhizomes were used as an antibiotic for skin infections and things like that. And they would use infusions of that to help cleanse wounds. So they would mix that with water, making kind of an infusion or decoction, and to wash out the wounds, sore throats, things like that. Sage. So that's a true herb, but also has many medicinal uses. So the leaves, they use teas to treat colds, fevers, that kind of stuff, sore throats, respiratory infections. Peppermint, sorry, those pictures should be reversed. So the peppermint's on the bottom. They use peppermint, obviously, for reducing indigestion. We still use that to this day for reducing indigestion and stomach pain and that kind of stuff. And also, you can inhale the steam. So if you've got the essential oil, if you've ever, my mom never made me do this, but she would I know friends whose parents did. They would take a bowl of hot water, they'd put some peppermint oil in there, and they'd force their head over it under a towel and ask them, just breathe that in, breathe it in. So inhaling that to help clear up that congestion so that they could breathe better. Mentholatum is kind of about the same way. It's a menthol, and you put that on your chest or whatever, and that helps try to kind of clear it all up so that you sleep a little easier. Ginseng roots, they would chew it or make a tea out of it, respiratory conditions. Seneca snake root, used for asthma, bronchitis, breathing issues. Witch hazel, hey, we still have that on the market today. That's for bruises, inflammation, things like that. Lobelia or Indian tobacco, that was used to treat asthma and bronchitis. Couple more. Ginger, we still have that. I think I have one of these. That's Earl Grey. I got a ginger tea up there. That worked great. I used that during my own pregnancies. I would drink the ginger tea to kind of quell the morning sickness. It did a great job of that. Still using that to today. There's ginger candies, all sorts of stuff out there that you can get. And you can make your own. Just you go get a ginger root at the store and you're going to steep that and then you can make your own. It's a lot healthier and probably way cheaper than going and buying the tea. Lavender, not only does it smell good, but also does have some medicinal purposes. These are internationally used here. I've moved on from the Native America. And then lemongrass, lots of good things that you can use. Lemongrass, both in cooking, medicinal uses, and insecticidal uses. It's used for bug spray. And you can make that, steep that. You could use it as a bug spray for yourself if you're out working in the garden, as well as drinking some lemongrass tea. Turmeric, this is one that helps with anti-inflammatory. I take a supplement for turmeric every day. I take it twice a day. I prefer not to have it in a tea form instead, because it is a little strong tasting. I take it in a supplement pill form. Hibiscus. Oh man, when we went to Mexico, the agua de Jamaica, oh my gosh. Una mas, that was some good stuff. I drank so much of that. I am not bilingual, but I knew enough to ask for more. It was really good. So if you get an opportunity to either get the concentrate, known as Roselle, it kind of depends on what part of the country you're from. This hibiscus flower is really tasty as brewed as a tea. It has a little bit of a kind of an astringent cranberry type flavor, but very light. You can put it with sweetener, but very good, very yummy. And then you've got Tulsi, the holy basil. It's part of the mint family, and you can kind of see it there. Lots of medicinal uses. Use it fresh, and then you can steep that. And that's basically it. So, if anybody has any questions, I am happy to answer them if I can. But as I mentioned, if you would like a copy of the slide deck, I am happy to share it with you. You can see my email address there. Just send me an email and say, hey, I'd love a copy of the slide deck for reference, and I will be happy to send that to you. So let's see if we've got any. And if you want to drop your county and city in there or your state, I would love to see where you all are from. That would be great. If you don't want to share with everybody, you can just drop it into the private conversation. It's great to see that so many people like tea. I like that. I may be drinking more tea because, I enjoy it every once in a while, but I didn't realize that there were so many uses for it. I knew it had been around forever, but, I've never taken a deep dive into it like this. Well, now that here's one I wish I could come across mullein on one of my walks. Now that you know what it looks like, go check out around some construction sites if you have those, or around the edge of near farmers' fields or big open fields, because it'll tend to pop up in semi-disturbed areas. So probably the easiest to find it at the end of the season when it's flowering like that. But you can always get one of those awesome apps that tell you, like oh, what is it called? I've got my phone here. Um, Picture this. You can use it. You can use it for free. It won't catalog everything for you unless you pay for it. But it does a great job of identifying a lot of that stuff. Black cohosh supplements can manage menopausal symptoms. Yes. So for those of us that are going through the change, there are some supplements out there. A lot of traditional medicine does actually recommend some of these supplements for menopausal women with hot flashes and memory and other stuff. Estrogen is one of them. It's a combination of a lot of these types of herbs that are known for that. So if you're having those symptoms or you're perimenopausal, it might be something to look into. Elderberry gummies for cold season, good job. In Jamaica, we use ginger in many ways. I grew some successfully for the first time this year. Yes, you can actually get, if you go to the store, you can purchase ginger, the roots there, and you can grow it here. So that's a tropical form. You have to harvest it at the end of the year, but you can harvest it and then take the roots and you can set them in your garage or someplace where it's cool. And then you can go back and plant that back that next growing season. You can get more and more. So, if you don't want to just buy it at the store, but yeah, I mean, you can grow a lot of the stuff in your garden. I mean, we have a long growing season here, so we should definitely take advantage of it. And even if you can't do that and you live in a condo, put it in a container. It's okay. You can do this with grow lights. Almost anything will grow in a container. You grow hibiscus, yes. So there are many different types of hibiscus, so you have to be aware if it's the correct type of hibiscus. The scientific name escapes me at the moment, Roselle and some of the others. But yes, we are actually trying to work with Georgia Gwinnett College to see if we can get a test patch of Roselle growing. They're trying to see if they can get some varieties that are tolerant of our hardiness zone here. So that would be kind of cool if we could grow it and have a long enough growing season to get it. But we already have some folks that do, but we're trying to see if we can get a hardier version where we don't have to dig it up. Because right now, I think most of what's out there is going to be you grow it for one season. It's essentially an annual. Roselle sorrel, yay. Yay for the last harvest. It can be a little hard to germinate, but if you've got some of your techniques, we might hit you up for that. All right, let's see. Anything else? Yummy. All right. And hopefully y'all try some tea after this. So, yes, hibiscus sorrel in Jamaica. Yes, rum. Hey, there we go. Mixing it with rum. I didn't think about that. I mostly just had it over ice as just a brewed tea, but that could be nice, like you said, around Christmas time. Let's see, anything else? Let's see. I know a few Trinidadians who'll see if they have any recipes. Yes, a lot of these are tropical and they do come from the islands. So, talk with folks and see if they've got recipes. The way shipping is now, you can get pretty much anything from around the world. And especially in and around the Metro Atlanta area, we have so many folks from so many different countries that Walmart, for instance, carries a lot of these things. I found a concentrated syrup of the Hymica when I was over in Lawrenceville. I bought it. I drank it all. It was really good. But yeah, so if you look, you can find a lot of these things, and they're going to be located probably near you, maybe in your own Walmart. You don't have to go down to Ponce or any of the other international markets. So yeah, just be a little adventurous and do a little research, see what you've got out in your backyard, and you guys might be surprised with all of that. A couple more, let's see, goldenrod. In my research coming across, I didn't see anything about making a tea out of goldenrod. As I mentioned, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just kind of I skimmed the top of the research list. I'm tempted to buy one of those apocalypse books that lists all of the different herbs and things so that you have that handy, just because it's really cool to kind of see what they used way back when. So that might be in there, might be worth a look. Hibiscus, good for blood pressure regulation. Good to know. Thank you. Any ideas on how we can turn this into school curriculum? Tixie, that's a good idea. You could probably take it and just parcel it out and do, a handful of these herbs and teach just the generalities of what they would be good for and maybe do a tea tasting. That would be a good way to do it. Have the kids actually make the tea and try the tea and that kind of stuff. But we can probably talk more about that later. Um, I love it, Melody. Yeah, get your seeds off Etsy. Just know that anytime you're buying something off Etsy or Amazon, you can get good quality seeds, but more likely you might get scammed. So sometimes folks will get on a group on Facebook or Nextdoor or someplace else where people who are growing it, actively growing it here in your neighborhood or in your county someplace, are more than happy usually to share seeds of the true plant with you, and you won't have to spend money. So, if you're interested in herbal teas or you would like to get interested, I would encourage you to jump into some of those groups and get to know. Yeah, we swap sweet seeds on Facebook groups, definitely right there. Folks are really happy to share and share both in seeds and knowledge. And that's a really excellent way to learn because some of these folks have been doing this forever and, maybe nobody in their family is interested. So, hey, jump in and use the internet in this case, and you can learn a lot of good stuff. So that is about it. We're about almost 10 minutes after. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Once again, if you want a copy of the deck, grab my email address real quick. And I'm in those groups too. Yes. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. So go get some dinner. And I hope you learned a few things. That's my goal here. And I'll see you next time. Have a good evening.